I stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the granite countertop. The muffled voices of my husband Joe and his mother Helen drifted from the study, their hushed tones only amplifying my growing unease. I shouldn't be eavesdropping, but something in my gut told me I needed to hear this. "Mom, I know it's a big change, but Claire will understand." Joe's voice carried through the door. "We have plenty of room, and it'll be good for all of us." My breath caught in my throat. What would I understand? Helen's reply was softer, but unmistakable. "I just don't want to be a burden, Joe. Are you sure Claire won't mind?" "Of course not," Joe assured her. "Besides, it's our house, too. Claire doesn't get to make all the decisions." I felt as if I'd been doused with ice water. Our house, the one I'd inherited from my parents, the one I'd lovingly maintained for decades. I pushed away from the counter, my mind reeling. The study door opened, and I scrambled to look busy, grabbing a dish towel and wiping down the already spotless counter. "Claire, honey?" Joe called out. "Can you come here for a second?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself before turning to face them. "What's going on?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Joe's smile was too wide, too forced. "Mom and I were just talking, and we have a great idea." Helen stood slightly behind him, her eyes darting nervously between us. I'd always thought we had a good relationship, but now I wasn't so sure. "Oh," I said, arching an eyebrow. "And what might that be?" Joe reached out to take my hand, but I subtly shifted away. His brow furrowed slightly before he continued. "Well, you know Mom's been having a hard time managing that big house on her own since Dad passed." I nodded, a knot forming in my stomach. "We were thinking," Joe went on, "that it might be nice if she moved in with us for a while, just until she figures out her next steps." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "Move in?" I repeated, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Here?" Helen stepped forward, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Oh, Claire, I don't want to impose. It's just that Joe thought, I cut in, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "And when exactly were you planning on discussing this with me, Joe?" His smile faltered. Well, I wanted to make sure Mom was on board first. I knew you'd be fine with it." "Did you?" I said, my tone icy. "Because, from where I'm standing, it sounds like you two have been planning this for a while without bothering to include me." Joe's face darkened. "Now, Claire, don't be like that. Mom needs our help." I turned to Helen, forcing myself to soften my expression. "Helen, I'm sorry, but this is a lot to take in. How long have you two been discussing this?" Helen glanced at Joe, her discomfort evident. "Well, we've been talking about it for a few weeks now. I told Joe we should wait, but—" "Weeks?" I interrupted, my composure cracking. "You've been planning this for weeks, and I'm just hearing about it now?" Joe stepped towards me, his voice low and urgent. "Claire, you're overreacting. It's not a big deal. Mom needs us, and we have the space." I took a step back, my hands clenched at my sides. "Not a big deal. This is my home, Joe. Our home. And you're making decisions about who lives here without even consulting me?" The tension in the room was palpable. Helen looked like she wanted to disappear, while Joe's jaw was set in that stubborn way I knew all too well. "I think," I said, fighting to keep my voice level, "that we all need some time to cool off and think about this. Helen, I'm sorry, but I need to speak with my husband alone." As Helen hurried out of the room, I turned to face Joe, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about Helen moving in. This was about trust, respect, and the realization that maybe I didn't know my husband as well as I thought I did. And I had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning of our troubles. The sound of Helen's laughter drifted up the stairs, mingling with the aroma of her famous pot roast. I gripped my book tighter, trying to focus on the words, but they blurred before my eyes. It had been 3 weeks since Helen moved in, and already our home felt like it belonged to someone else. I heard Joe's heavy footsteps on the stairs. "Claire, dinner's ready." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for another meal of forced smiles and stilted conversation. "Coming," I called, setting my book aside. As I entered the dining room, Helen beamed at me from her seat next to Joe. "My seat. Oh, Claire, I hope you don't mind, but I thought I'd try out my pot roast recipe. Joe always loved it when he was growing up." I plastered on a smile. "That's thoughtful of you, Helen. I'm sure it's delicious." Joe barely looked up from his plate. Mom's pot roast is the best. You'll love it, Claire. I sat down, my appetite vanishing. I'm sure I will. As we ate, Helen dominated the conversation, regaling us with stories of Joe's childhood. I pushed my food around my plate, feeling more like an outsider with each passing moment. "Oh, Joe," Helen said, patting his arm, "remember how you used to help me in the kitchen? Maybe you could start doing that again. Give Claire a break from all the cooking." I set my fork down with a clatter. "I enjoy cooking, Helen. It's not a chore for me." Helen's eyes widened. "Oh, I didn't mean to imply, I just thought with your busy schedule." "My schedule is fine," I said, my voice tight. "I manage just fine." Joe frowned at me. "Mom's just trying to help, Claire. No need to get defensive." I bit back a retort, choosing instead to take a long sip of water. The tension in the room was palpable. After dinner, I escaped to the kitchen, busying myself with dishes. Joe followed me in, his expression troubled. "What's going on with you lately?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "You've been so prickly." I scrubbed a plate with more force than necessary. "Prickly? Is that what you call it when I express an opinion in my own home?" Joe sighed. "Come on, Claire. Mom's just trying to fit in. Can't you make more of an effort?" I whirled to face him. "More of an effort? Joe, I've bent over backward trying to accommodate your mother, but it feels like she's taking over our home, and you're letting her." "That's ridiculous," Joe scoffed. "She's just being helpful." "Helpful?" I echoed. "Is that what you call rearranging my kitchen without asking, or changing our routines to suit her preferences?" Joe's face hardened. "She's my mother, Claire, and she needs us right now. I thought you'd understand that." I felt a surge of frustration. "Of course I understand that, but this is our home, Joe, our life, and lately it feels like I'm the outsider." Before Joe could respond, Helen appeared in the doorway. "Is everything all right?" I heard raised voices. Joe immediately softened his tone. "Everything's fine, Mom. Claire and I were just discussing some things." Helen's gaze darted between us. "Oh, I hope I'm not causing any trouble. Maybe I should start looking for my own place." "No," Joe said quickly. "You're not going anywhere, Mom. Claire's just having a hard time adjusting, that's all." I stared at him, stunned by his dismissal of my feelings. "I'm going for a walk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. As I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, I heard Helen's voice behind me. "Oh, Joe, I feel terrible. Maybe I should talk to her." "Leave her be, Mom," Joe replied. "She'll come around. She always does." I stepped out into the cool evening air, fighting back tears. As I walked down our quiet street, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing not just my home, but my husband as well, and I had no idea how to fix it. I was in the middle of folding laundry when the doorbell rang. Grateful for any distraction from the monotony of household chores, I hurried to answer it. The moment I opened the door, my heart sank. There stood Nick, Joe's younger brother, looking disheveled and carrying a battered duffel bag. "Hey, sis," he said with a lopsided grin. "Surprise!" Before I could respond, Joe appeared behind me. "Nick, what are you doing here?" Nick's grin faltered. "What? No hello? For your little brother? I quit my job. Figured I'd come home for a while." Joe ushered him inside, and I felt my carefully maintained equilibrium shatter. As if having Helen here wasn't enough. Now this. "You can't just show up unannounced," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "We don't have room." "Oh, don't be silly," Helen's voice chimed in as she bustled into the foyer. "There's plenty of room. Nick can stay in the guest room." I whirled to face her. "Helen, that's your room now, and we can't just—" "It's fine," Helen interrupted. "I'll move to the den. It'll be cozy." Joe nodded, clapping Nick on the shoulder. "See? Problem solved." I stood there, mouth agape, as they all moved past me into the living room. It was like I'd become invisible in my own home. Later that evening, I cornered Joe in our bedroom. "We need to talk about this," I hissed. "Nick can't stay here. We can't afford another mouth to feed, and you know how he is." Joe sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Claire, he's family. We can't turn him away. Besides, it's only temporary." "That's what you said about your mother," I retorted. "And now look where we are." "What's that supposed to mean?" Joe's voice took on a dangerous edge. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "It means that our home is becoming a boarding house, and I don't have any say in it." "It's my home, too," Joe snapped. "And they're my family. Why are you being so selfish?" His words hit me like a slap. "Selfish? Is that what you think this is?" Before Joe could respond, we heard a crash from downstairs, followed by Nick's muffled cursing. We rushed down to find Nick standing amidst the shattered remains of my grandmother's antique vase. The acrid smell of alcohol hung in the air. "Oops," Nick said with a sheepish grin. "My bad." I felt something snap inside me. "That's it," I said, my voice shaking. "Nick, you need to leave. Now." Joe stepped between us. "Claire, calm down. It was an accident." "An accident?" I echoed incredulously. "He's drunk, Joe, in our home." Nick's face darkened. "Hey, I didn't ask to be here, you know. If you two hadn't sold the family home—" "We didn't have a choice," Joe shouted. "Mom couldn't manage it anymore, and you weren't exactly offering to help." I watched in stunned silence as the brothers faced off, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "Boys, please," Helen pleaded, appearing from the den. "Let's not fight." I turned to her, my patience finally at its end. "This is your fault," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You've turned this house upside down since you arrived, and now this." Helen's eyes widened in shock. "Claire, I never meant—" "Save it," I cut her off. I turned to Joe, who was staring at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "I want them both out. Now." Joe's jaw clenched. "You don't get to make that decision on your own." "Don't I?" I challenged. "This is my house, Joe. The one I inherited from my parents, and I'm telling you I want them out." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Joe looked from me to his mother and brother, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "If they go," he said slowly, "I go with them." His words hung in the air between us, a line drawn in the sand. As I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of my grandmother's vase and the family I thought I knew, I realized that everything had changed, and there was no going back. The days following Nick's arrival blurred together in a haze of tension and barely contained anger. I felt like a stranger in my own home, tiptoeing around Nick's mood swings and Joe's growing resentment. Helen, for her part, seemed determined to play peacemaker, which only grated on my nerves further. One morning I came downstairs to find Nick sprawled on the couch, empty beer cans littering the coffee table. The clock read 10:30 a.m. "Nick," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "don't you think it's time to start looking for a job?" He cracked open one eye, regarding me with disdain. "What are you, my mother?" I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head. "No, but I am the one whose home you're living in. For free, I might add." Nick sat up, his eyes narrowing. "Oh, that's rich. You think this is your home? This was our family's house long before you came along, sweetheart." "Actually," I said, my patience wearing thin, "this house belonged to my parents. Joe and I moved in after they passed." Nick's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Well, aren't you Little Miss Perfect? Bet you think you're better than us, don't you?" Before I could respond, Joe walked in. "What's going on here?" "Your wife," Nick spat, "is trying to kick me out." Joe turned to me, his expression hardening. "Claire, we talked about this. Nick stays." I felt a surge of frustration. "Joe, he's drinking all day, making a mess, and refusing to look for work. How long are we supposed to put up with this?" "He's family," Joe said, as if that explained everything. "And what am I?" I shot back. "Because lately it feels like I'm just the maid and ATM for your family." Joe's face flushed with anger. "That's not fair, Claire. You know how important family is to me." "I thought I was your family, too," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between us. Nick looked from Joe to me, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Trouble in paradise?" he taunted. I whirled on him. "You, out, now." Joe stepped between us. "Claire, stop it. You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I echoed, incredulous. "Your brother is a drunk who's taking advantage of us, and you're letting him." "Don't talk about my brother like that," Joe growled. I threw my hands up in exasperation. "Fine. If you won't do something about this, I will." I stormed out of the room, my mind racing. I needed to get out of the house to clear my head. As I grabbed my keys, Helen appeared in the hallway. "Claire, dear," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, "why don't we sit down and talk about this? I'm sure we can work something out." I turned to her, my patience finally snapping. "No, Helen. We can't work something out. This is my home, and I'm tired of being treated like an outsider in it." Helen's face fell. "Oh, Claire, we're just trying to be a family. Why can't you understand that?" "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you and Nick are tearing my marriage apart." Helen's eyes widened in shock. Now that's not fair. Joe loves you. Does he? I interrupted, because lately it feels like he loves you and Nick more than he ever loved me. I pushed past her, ignoring her protests as I headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, Joe's voice called out behind me. Claire, where are you going? I turned to face him, seeing the confusion and anger in his eyes. In that moment, I realized I had a choice to make. I could stay and continue to be pushed aside, or I could stand up for myself, even if it meant risking everything. I'm leaving, Joe, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. And when I come back, I expect Nick to be gone. If he's not... I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. If he's not, then maybe I shouldn't come back at all. With that, I walked out the door, leaving a stunned silence in my wake. As I got into my car, I caught a glimpse of Joe's face in the window. The look of shock and betrayal I saw there made my heart ache, but I knew I had to stand my ground. It was time to fight for my home, my marriage, and myself. I returned home late that evening, my emotions a tangled mess of anger, hurt, and determination. The house was quiet as I entered, but the acrid smell of smoke hit me immediately. My heart raced as I rushed through the rooms, calling out for Joe. I found him in the kitchen, scrubbing furiously at a blackened pot. The window was wide open, and a fan was whirring at full speed. What happened? I demanded, my voice tight with fear and anger. Joe jumped, turning to face me with guilty eyes. Claire, you're back. It's nothing. Just a little cooking accident. But I could see the scorch marks on the wall behind the stove, the melted plastic of the nearby utensils. This was no small accident. Where's Nick? Where's Nick? I asked, my suspicion growing. Joe's hesitation told me everything. He went out for a bit, to clear his head. Joe, I said, my voice dangerously low, tell me the truth. What happened? He sighed, shoulders slumping. Nick was trying to cook something. He'd been drinking and, well, he fell asleep. The pot caught fire. But it's okay. We put it out before it spread. I felt the blood drain from my face. You put it out? Who's we? Mom and I, Joe admitted. We were upstairs when we smelled the smoke. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They'd known. They'd all known, and they'd tried to hide it from me. When did this happen? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Joe couldn't meet my eyes. This afternoon, right after you left. I stumbled back, gripping the counter for support. You've been cleaning up all day, trying to hide this from me? We didn't want to worry you, Helen's voice came from behind me. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, her face a mask of concern. Joe thought it best if we handled it ourselves. Handled it? I repeated, incredulous. Nick could have burned our house down. He could have killed you both. But he didn't, Joe interjected. It was an accident, Claire. These things happen. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. These things happen. Joe, your brother is out of control. He's dangerous, and you're enabling him. That's not fair, Helen cut in. Nick is going through a difficult time. He needs our support, not judgment. I whirled on her. And what about me, Helen? What about what I need? This is my home, and I don't feel safe here anymore. The front door slammed, and Nick's voice called out, slurred and jovial. Hey, family, who's ready for round 2? Something inside me snapped. I stormed past Helen and Joe, marching into the living room where Nick was sprawled on the couch, a fresh beer in hand. You, I said, my voice shaking with rage, you need to leave. Now. Nick looked up at me, his eyes unfocused. Aw, come on, sis, don't be like that. I'm not your sister, I spat, and this isn't your home. You almost burned it down today, and I want you out. Joe appeared beside me, his face pale. Claire, please, let's talk about this. No, I said, my resolve hardening. I'm done talking. Either Nick leaves, or I do. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Nick staggered to his feet, his face twisting into a sneer. You can't kick me out, he slurred. This is my family's house. You're just the interloper. I felt something break inside me. Years of frustration, of feeling like an outsider in my own home, came rushing to the surface. This is my house, I said, my voice low and dangerous. The house my parents left to me. And I want you out. All of you. Joe's face crumpled. Claire, you don't mean that. We're family. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man I'd married, the one who'd promised to stand by me, was gone. No, Joe, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We're not family. Not anymore. I turned and walked out of the room. my decision made. As I climbed the stairs to pack a bag, I heard the muffled voices of Joe and Helen trying to calm Nick down. But I was beyond caring. It was time to take back control of my life, even if it meant leaving behind everything I thought I knew. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at my own front door in disbelief. The lock had been changed. I jiggled the handle again, hoping against hope that it was just stuck, but the cold metal remained unyielding under my grip. "Joe," I called out, my voice cracking. "Joe, open the door." Silence greeted me. I pounded on the door, my frustration mounting. "Helen? Nick? Someone open this door right now." A curtain twitched in the living room window, and I caught a glimpse of Helen's face before she quickly disappeared from view. My blood boiled. "I know you're in there," I shouted. "This is my house. You can't lock me out." Suddenly, the door swung open, revealing Joe. His face was a mask of forced calm, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the guilt in his eyes. "Claire," he said, his voice low and controlled, "I think you need some time to cool off." I gaped at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Cool off? You locked me out of my own home," Joe sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's for the best, Claire. You're not thinking clearly. You threatened to kick us all out, remember? Because Nick almost burned the house down," I retorted, my voice rising. "And you all tried to hide it from me." "It was an accident," Joe insisted. "And you're overreacting. We're family, Claire. We need to stick together." I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my throat. "Family? Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've chosen your mother and brother over your wife." Joe's face hardened. "That's not fair. I'm trying to keep everyone together." "At what cost, Joe?" I asked, my voice breaking. "At the cost of our marriage? Of my sanity?" Before Joe could respond, Nick appeared behind him, beer in hand. "What's the problem?" he slurred. "Can't the little woman take a joke?" I saw red. "You," I snarled, lunging forward. Joe caught me, holding me back as I struggled against him. "You're the problem, Nick. You're destroying everything." "Claire, stop it," Joe shouted, Joe the Bat pushing me back onto the porch. "This is exactly why you need to leave. You're out of control." I stumbled backward, shocked by the force of his push. As I regained my balance, I saw Helen appear in the doorway, her face a picture of false concern. "Oh, Claire," she cooed, "why don't you go stay with a friend for a few days? Give everyone a chance to calm down." The patronizing tone in her voice was the final straw. I straightened up, my voice deadly calm as I addressed Joe. "If you don't let me in right now, I'm calling the police." Joe's eyes widened in alarm. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I challenged. For a moment, we stood there in a tense standoff. Then, to my horror, Joe slowly shook his head. "I'm sorry, Claire, but this is for your own good, for all of our good." And with that, he closed the door in my face. I heard the lock click into place, final and damning. I stood there, stunned, as the reality of the situation crashed over me. I was locked out of my own home, betrayed by the man I had loved and trusted for decades. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Mom," I said when she answered, my voice breaking. "I need help." As I walked away from the house that was no longer my home, I felt a strange mix of despair and determination. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Joe and his family had no idea what they'd just unleashed. I may have lost my home for now, but I was far from defeated. It was time to fight back, and I knew exactly where to start. I sat across from my lawyer, Sarah, my hands clutching a manila folder filled with documents. The past week had been a whirlwind of emotions and revelations, but now I felt a steely resolve settling over me. "Are you sure about this, Claire?" Sarah asked, her eyes searching mine. "Once we file these papers, there's no going back." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I'm sure. It's time to take back control of my life," Sarah nodded, reaching for the divorce papers. As she began to file them, my mind raced back to the conversation I'd had with my mother just days ago. "Claire," she'd said, her voice filled with a strength I'd forgotten she possessed, "you're not the first woman to face this kind of betrayal, and you won't be the last. But you have something many others don't. That house is yours. Fight for it." Her words had ignited a fire in me, reminding me of the strong, independent woman I used to be, the woman I could be again. A knock on the office door jolted me back to the present. Sarah's assistant poked her head in. "Mrs. Thompson? There's a Joe Thompson here to see you. He says it's urgent." My heart raced as Joe burst into the room, his face a mix of anger and desperation. "Claire, what are you doing? Divorce papers. This is insane." I stood facing him squarely. "No, Joe, what's insane is locking your wife out of her own home. What's insane is choosing your alcoholic brother over your marriage." Joe's face crumpled. "I never chose Nick over you. I was trying to help everyone. By betraying me?" I shot back. "By hiding things from me? That's not how a marriage works, Joe." "Please," he begged, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "We can fix this. Just come home." I shook my head, feeling a strange mix of sadness and strength. "It's not my home anymore, Joe. You made that clear when you changed the locks." Sarah cleared her throat, reminding us of her presence. "Mr. Thompson, I must advise you to leave. Any further communication should go through your lawyer." Joe's eyes widened as the reality of the situation sank in. "Lawyer? Claire, you can't be serious. That house, it's our home." "No," I said, my voice steady. "It's my home, the one my parents left to me, and I want it back." Joe stumbled backward as if I'd struck him. You're kicking us out?" "I'm reclaiming what's mine," I corrected him. "You, Helen, and Nick need to find somewhere else to live." The color drained from Joe's face. "But where will we go? Mom can't afford her own place, and Nick—" "That's not my problem anymore," I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. "You made your choice, Joe. Now you have to live with it." As Sarah ushered a shell-shocked Joe out of the office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely, but my relief was short-lived. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor. "Claire, there's a moving truck at your house. Helen and Nick are loading things into it. You need to get here now." My heart raced as I showed the message to Sarah. "What do I do?" I asked, panic rising in my throat. Sarah's eyes hardened with determination. "We fight. I'll call the police. You get to that house and stop them from taking anything that isn't theirs." As I rushed out of the office, my mind whirled with possibilities. What if I was too late? What if they'd already taken everything? What if Joe had sold or destroyed my belongings out of spite? I gripped the steering wheel tightly as I sped towards my house, towards the confrontation that would determine the course of my future. This was it, the moment of truth. Everything I had worked for, everything I had built, hung in the balance. As I turned onto my street and saw the moving truck in my driveway, a surge of adrenaline coursed through me. This was war, and I was ready to fight. I stood in the doorway of my newly reclaimed home, surveying the empty rooms with a mixture of relief and melancholy. The last 6 months had been a whirlwind of legal battles, emotional confrontations, and painful goodbyes. But here I was, finally alone in the house that had been the center of so much turmoil. The day I'd arrived to find Helen and Nick loading the moving truck had been the turning point. With Sarah's legal backing and the police's intervention, we'd managed to stop them from taking anything that wasn't rightfully theirs. Joe had shown up, his face a mask of disbelief and anger, but it was too late. The truth about the house's ownership had come to light, and they had no choice but to leave. Now, as I walked through the quiet rooms, memories flooded back, both good and bad. I paused in the kitchen, remembering the countless meals I'd prepared for Joe, the laughter we'd shared, the dreams we'd built. But those memories were tainted now by the betrayal and lies that had torn us apart. A knock at the door startled me from my reverie. I opened it to find my neighbor, Martha, holding a casserole dish. "Thought you might need some company and a hot meal," she said with a warm smile. As we sat at my kitchen table, Martha filled me in on the neighborhood gossip. Apparently, Helen and Nick had moved in with a distant cousin, while Joe had rented a small apartment across town. "Have you heard from any of them?" Martha asked gently. I shook my head. "No, and I don't expect to. It's better this way." Martha reached across the table, patting my hand. "You know, Claire, I've always admired your strength. Not many women our age would have the courage to start over like this." Her words struck a chord in me. Starting over. That's exactly what I was doing, wasn't it? The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I spent the day decluttering, donating items that held too many painful memories. As I worked, I felt lighter, as if I was shedding the weight of my past with each box I filled. Weeks passed, and slowly I began to rediscover myself. I joined a book club, took up painting classes, and even started volunteering at the local animal shelter. The house that had once felt like a prison now became my sanctuary, a place where I could heal and grow. One sunny afternoon, as I was leaving the courthouse after finalizing some paperwork, I quite literally bumped into someone. "I'm so sorry," a deep voice said. I looked up to see a distinguished-looking man with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I assured him, feeling a flutter in my chest that I hadn't experienced in years. He introduced himself as David, a recently retired judge. We got to talking, and before I knew it, we were sharing coffee at a nearby cafe. As David regaled me with stories from his years on the bench, I found myself laughing genuinely for the first time in months. When he asked if I'd like to have dinner sometime, I surprised myself by saying yes. That evening, as I stood in front of my mirror getting ready for my date, I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me. Gone was the defeated, worn-down version of myself that had existed just months ago. In her place stood a woman with a sparkle in her eye and hope in her heart. I thought back to the day Joe had locked me out of our home, how lost and betrayed I had felt. If someone had told me then that I'd be where I am now, divorced, yes, but stronger, happier, and on the cusp of a new adventure, I wouldn't have believed them. As I grabbed my purse and headed out the door, I paused for a moment, looking back at the house that had seen so much drama and pain. But now, it was filled with possibility and promise. I had reclaimed not just my home, but myself. With a smile, I locked the door behind me and stepped out into the warm evening air. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited to see where it might lead. My story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. The doorbell rings and I freeze. It's a sound I haven't heard in years, not since he walked out on us. My heart races as I approach the door, a mixture of anger and curiosity burning in my chest. I take a deep breath and open it, revealing the man I once loved, the man who shattered my trust and broke our family. "Hello, Amara," Grayson says, a charming smile on his face. "It's been a while." "I never thought I'd see your face again, Grayson. After all these years, you think you can just waltz back into our lives like nothing happened?" My voice trembles with barely contained fury. He steps forward, his eyes pleading. "I know I made mistakes, but I've changed. I want to make things right, especially with Zoe. She deserves to have her father in her life." I scoff, crossing my arms. "Zoe deserves better than a father who abandoned her. You lost the right to be in her life when you walked away." Grayson sighs, running a hand through his hair. "I was a different man then, Amara. I was selfish and foolish, but I've learned from my mistakes. Please just give me a chance to prove myself." I hesitate, torn between the desire to protect my daughter and the small part of me that still remembers the man I fell in love with. "One chance, Grayson. That's all you get. But if you hurt Zoe again, I swear I'll make you regret it." He nods, relief washing over his face. "Thank you, Amara. I won't let you down." As he steps into our home, I can't shake the feeling that I've just invited trouble back into our lives. But for Zoe's sake, I'm willing to give him a chance to be the father she deserves. Over the next few weeks, Grayson charms his way back into our lives. He takes Zoe out for father-daughter bonding, listens intently to her stories, and showers her with affection. I watch from a distance, my heart aching as I see the joy on Zoe's face, a joy I haven't seen in years. One evening, as we're cleaning up after a catering event, Grayson approaches me with a proposition. "Amara, I've been thinking about your business. I have some ideas on how we can expand, take things to the next level." I raise an eyebrow, surprised by his sudden interest. "I appreciate the offer, Grayson, but I've been managing just fine on my own." He leans in, his eyes sincere. "I know you have, but imagine what we could achieve together. With my business knowledge and your culinary skills, we could make this catering company the talk of Houston." Against my better judgment, I find myself considering his offer. The prospect of growing my business is tempting, and having Grayson's support could make it easier. "I'll think about it," I concede, "but I'm not making any promises." Grayson smiles, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "That's all I ask, Amara. Together, we can make something amazing." As he walks away, I can't help but feel a twinge of unease. Grayson's sudden interest in my business, his smooth words and charming demeanor, it all feels too familiar. I've fallen for his tricks before, and I can't afford to let my guard down again. But for now, I'll play along, keeping a watchful eye on the man who once broke my heart. As the days pass, Grayson's presence in our lives becomes more pronounced. He's always around, offering to help with the catering business, bonding with Zoe, and trying to win me over with his charm. Despite my reservations, I find myself letting him in, little by little. One afternoon, as we're preparing for a big event, Grayson pulls me aside. "Amara, I've been looking over the business's finances, and I think I can help you secure a loan to expand. With the right investment, we could take this company to new heights." I frown, unsure of his sudden interest in my business's financial matters. "I appreciate the offer, Grayson, but I'm not comfortable taking out a loan. We're doing just fine as we are." He places a hand on my shoulder, his eyes intense. "Trust me, Amara, I know what I'm doing. With this loan, we can buy better equipment, hire more staff, and take on bigger clients. It's a risk, but the payoff will be worth it." Against my better judgment, I find myself agreeing. Grayson's confidence is infectious, and the prospect of expanding the business is tempting. "Okay, let's do it, but I want to be involved every step of the way." Grayson grins, squeezing my shoulder. "Of course, partner, we're in this together." As we work on securing the loan, I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. Grayson is too eager, too insistent on using my house as collateral, but every time I express my doubts, he reassures me with his smooth words and charming smile. One evening, as I'm going over the paperwork, my best friend and business partner, Liam, stops by. He takes one look at the loan documents and frowns. "Amara, are you sure about this? It's a lot of money, and using your house as collateral is risky." I sigh, rubbing my temples. "I know, Liam, but Grayson seems to know what he's doing. He's convinced this is the right move for the business." Liam's eyes narrow, his voice low and serious. "I don't trust him, Amara. He shows up out of nowhere after 10 years, and suddenly he's an expert on your business? Something doesn't add up." His words strike a chord, and I feel a knot forming in my stomach. "You're right, Liam. I've been so caught up in the idea of expanding that I haven't been thinking clearly. I'll talk to Grayson, see if we can find another way." But when I confront Grayson, he becomes defensive. "Amara, this is our chance to make something great. Don't let Liam's doubts hold you back. He's just jealous of what we have, of the bond we share as a family." His words are like honey, sweet and convincing, but there's a bitter aftertaste. "I don't know, Grayson. Maybe we should slow down, think this through." Grayson's eyes flash with anger, his voice cold. "I thought you trusted me, Amara. I thought we were partners. But if you'd rather listen to Liam than your own husband, then maybe I was wrong about you." I flinch at his words, a part of me still desperate to believe in the man I once loved. "No, Grayson, I do trust you. I'm sorry for doubting you. Let's move forward with the loan." As we sign the papers, I feel a sense of unease washing over me. I've just tied my future, my home, to a man I'm no longer sure I can trust. But it's too late to back out now. I've made my choice, and I can only hope that Grayson's intentions are as pure as he claims. That night, as I lie awake in bed, Zoe comes into my room, her face etched with worry. "Mom, I need to talk to you about Dad. He's been asking me for money, saying it's for the business. But something doesn't feel right." My heart sinks, a cold realization dawning on me. Grayson's been manipulating not just me, but our daughter as well. And now, we're both caught in his web of lies and deceit. Zoe's revelation about Grayson asking her for money sends a chill down my spine. I sit up in bed, my heart racing as I process the implications of his actions. "Zoe, honey, how much money has your father asked for?" She looks down, her voice trembling. "A few $1,000s. He said it was for some business expenses, that he'd pay me back as soon as the loan came through. But when I asked him about it later, he got angry and told me not to mention it to you." I pull her into a hug, my mind reeling with the realization that Grayson has been manipulating our daughter. "It's okay, sweetie. You did the right thing by telling me. I'll handle this." The next morning, I confront Grayson in the kitchen. "We need to talk. Zoe told me you've been asking her for money. What's going on, Grayson?" He looks up from his coffee, his expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. "It's nothing, Amara. Just a little misunderstanding. I needed some cash to cover a few expenses, but I'll pay her back as soon as the loan comes through." I shake my head, anger bubbling up inside me. "No, Grayson. You don't get to use our daughter like that. If you needed money, you should have come to me. We're supposed to be partners, remember? Grayson's eyes narrow, his voice taking on a defensive tone. I didn't want to bother you with every little detail, Amara. I'm just trying to keep the business running smoothly. You're overreacting. Overreacting? You're taking advantage of our daughter's trust, and you expect me to be okay with that. I slam my hand on the counter, my voice rising. And what about the loan? I've been going over the paperwork, and something doesn't add up. Where's the money going, Grayson? He stands up, his face flushed with anger. I don't have to explain myself to you, Amara. I'm doing what's best for this family, for our business. If you can't see that, then maybe you're not the partner I thought you were. I step back, stunned by his outburst. I'm not the one hiding things, Grayson. I'm not the one lying to our daughter. I want the truth, and I want it now. Grayson grabs his jacket, his eyes cold and distant. You want the truth? Fine. The truth is I've been cleaning up your mess, Amara. This business was failing before I came back, and I'm the only one who can save it. If you can't handle that, then maybe I should just leave. He storms out of the house, leaving me shaking with anger and confusion. I collapse into a chair, my head in my hands, as I try to make sense of what just happened. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let Grayson back into our lives, only to have him betray us like this? I spend the next few hours going over the business's financial records, trying to piece together where the money has been going. As I dig deeper, I uncover a trail of discrepancies and hidden transactions, all leading back to Grayson. He's been embezzling money from the business, siphoning off funds into his own accounts. My heart sinks as the reality of his betrayal sinks in. The man I once loved, the father of my child, is nothing more than a liar and a thief, and now he's put our entire future at risk. I pick up the phone, my hands shaking as I dial Liam's number. Liam, it's me. You were right about Grayson. He's been stealing from the business, and he's manipulating Zoe. I need your help. We have to stop him before it's too late. As I hang up, I feel a sense of determination washing over me. I won't let Grayson destroy our lives, our business, our family. I'll do whatever it takes to protect what's mine, even if it means taking down the man I once loved. Liam arrives at my house within the hour, his face etched with concern. I pour out the whole story, showing him the financial records and the evidence of Grayson's betrayal. He listens intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. Amara, this is serious, he says, his voice grave. Grayson's not just embezzling money from the business. He's been gambling it away. I've heard rumors about him getting involved with some shady characters, running illegal poker games. My stomach churns at the thought of Grayson's deception, running even deeper than I imagined. I can't believe I let him into our lives, Liam. I trusted him, and he's been lying to me this whole time. Liam places a comforting hand on my shoulder. It's not your fault, Amara. Grayson's a master manipulator. He knew exactly what to say and do to gain your trust. But now that we know the truth, we can fight back. I nod, a fierce determination burning in my chest. You're right. I won't let him get away with this. He's not just stealing from me, he's stealing from Zoe's future. I have to protect my daughter. As if on cue, Zoe walks into the room, her eyes wide with fear. Mom, what's going on? I heard you and Liam talking about Dad. Is everything okay? I take a deep breath, knowing that I can't shield her from the truth any longer. Zoe, honey, I need to tell you something about your father. He's been lying to us, stealing money from the business, and using it to gamble. Zoe's face crumples, tears welling up in her eyes. What? No, that can't be true. Dad wouldn't do that to us. He loves us. My heart breaks for my daughter, knowing the pain she must be feeling. I know it's hard to believe, sweetie, but it's the truth. Your father has been manipulating both of us, taking advantage of our trust. Zoe collapses into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I gave him money, Mom. I thought I was helping him, helping the business. But he was just using me, wasn't he? I stroke her hair, my own tears falling silently. It's not your fault, Zoe. Your father's the one who betrayed us. But I promise you, I won't let him hurt us anymore. We'll get through this together. Liam clears his throat, his expression somber. Amara, we need to act fast. If Grayson's been gambling with the loan money, it's only a matter of time before the bank comes after you. We need to gather all the evidence we can and take it to the authorities. I nod, wiping away my tears. You're right, Liam. I won't let Grayson destroy everything I've worked so hard to build. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he pays for what he's done. Over the next few days, Liam and I worked tirelessly to gather evidence of Grayson's crimes. We pore over financial records, track down witnesses, and piece together a damning case against him. All the while, I try to shield Zoe from the worst of it, knowing that she's already been through so much. But even as we work to bring Grayson to justice, the consequences of his actions begin to catch up with us. The bank calls, threatening to foreclose on the house if we can't pay back the loan. Suppliers start demanding payment for overdue invoices, and clients begin to question the stability of our business. I feel like I'm drowning, the weight of Grayson's betrayal crushing me from all sides. But I refuse to give up. I made a promise to Zoe, to myself, that I would make things right, and I intend to keep that promise, no matter what it takes. One evening, as I'm working late in the office, Grayson storms in, his face twisted with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Amara? I know you've been digging into my business, trying to turn everyone against me." I stand my ground, my voice steady and cold. "I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago, Grayson. I'm exposing you for the liar and thief that you are. You've hurt me, you've hurt Zoe, and you've put everything we've worked for at risk. It's over." Grayson laughs, a cruel, mocking sound. "You think you can stop me, Amara? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'll destroy you just like I destroyed this business, and when I'm done, you'll have nothing left." He storms out, leaving me shaking with anger and fear, but I won't let his threats deter me. I have the truth on my side, and I won't rest until Grayson pays for his crimes. No matter what it takes, I'll make sure he never hurts us again. The next morning, I wake up to a pounding on my front door. I stumble out of bed, my heart racing as I peer through the peephole. Two men in suits stand outside, their faces grim and impatient. I open the door, my hands trembling. "Amara Johnson?" one of the men asks, his voice gruff and businesslike. I nod, my throat suddenly dry. "Yes, that's me. What's this about?" The man hands me a stack of papers, his expression unchanged. "We're from the bank. You're in default on your loan, and we're here to inform you that we're starting the foreclosure process on your house." My stomach drops, a wave of panic washing over me. "Foreclosure? No, there must be some mistake. I've been making payments on time." The man shakes his head, his voice cold and unsympathetic. "Not according to our records. You've missed several payments, and the loan is now in default. You have 30 days to bring the loan current, or we'll be forced to take possession of the property." I stand there, stunned, as the men turn and walk away. I close the door, my legs giving out from under me as I sink to the floor. How could this be happening? How could Grayson have let things get this bad? I pick up my phone, my hands shaking as I dial Liam's number. "Liam, it's me. The bank was just here. They're going to foreclose on my house if I don't come up with the money." Liam's voice is calm and reassuring on the other end of the line. "Okay, Amara, take a deep breath. We'll figure this out. I've been doing some digging into Grayson's past, and I think I might have found something that can help us." I feel a flicker of hope, a glimmer of light in the darkness. "What did you find?" It turns out Grayson has a history of scamming women, running illegal gambling rings, and embezzling money from businesses he's been involved with. I've tracked down some of his former partners and victims, and they're willing to testify against him. I let out a shaky breath, my mind reeling with the implications of Liam's discovery. "So, we have a case against him? We can prove that he's been stealing from the business, from me and Zoe?" "It's a start," Liam says, his voice cautious but determined. "But we need more evidence, something concrete that ties him directly to the embezzlement and the illegal gambling." "I have an idea, but it's risky." I feel a surge of determination, a fire burning in my chest. "I'll do whatever it takes, Liam. I won't let Grayson destroy our lives any more than he already has." Over the next few days, Liam and I worked tirelessly to gather evidence against Grayson. We tracked down his former associates, convinced them to turn over records and testimony, and pieced together a damning case against him. All the while, I try to keep up appearances at work, not wanting to let on to Grayson that we're closing in on him. But Grayson is growing increasingly erratic, his behavior more and more unpredictable. He shows up at the office at odd hours, demanding to see the books, accusing me of trying to undermine him. I do my best to keep my cool, knowing that any slip-up could jeopardize our plan. One evening, as I'm working late in the office, Grayson bursts in, his eyes wild with anger. "You think you're so clever, don't you, Amara? You think you can outsmart me, turn everyone against me?" I stand my ground, my voice steady and calm. "It's over, Grayson. We have evidence of your crimes, of your lies and your betrayal. You're going to pay for what you've done to me, to Zoe, to this business." Grayson lunges at me, his hands reaching for my throat. I dodge out of the way, my heart pounding in my chest. "You'll never prove anything," he snarls, his face twisted with rage. "I'll destroy you, Amara. I'll take everything you love and burn it to the ground." I back away, my hand reaching for the phone. "You're wrong, Grayson. You've already lost, and now you're going to face the consequences of your actions." I dial 911, my voice shaking as I report the assault. As the police sirens grow closer, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's not over yet, but for the first time in months, I feel like I'm taking control of my life, my future, and I won't let Grayson take that away from me again. The police arrive within minutes. We're taking Grayson into custody. As they lead him away in handcuffs, he shoots me a venomous glare, his eyes promising retribution, but I refuse to let his threats intimidate me. I've come too far to back down now. In the days that follow, Liam and I put our plan into action. We reach out to Grayson's former associates, the ones he's scammed and cheated over the years, and convince them to join forces with us. Together, we devise a scheme to lure Grayson into a trap, to catch him red-handed in the act of his crimes. It's a risky gambit, but it's the only way to ensure that Grayson pays for what he's done. We set up a high-stakes poker game, spreading the word through the underground gambling circuit that Grayson used to frequent. We make sure that the game is heavily monitored, with undercover police officers posing as players and dealers. The night of the game arrives, and I feel a mix of nerves and anticipation as I watch from a hidden camera. Grayson swaggers into the room, his arrogance on full display. He takes a seat at the table, his eyes gleaming with greed as he surveys the other players. As the game progresses, Grayson becomes more and more reckless, betting larger and larger sums of money. I watch as he pulls out a wad of cash, the same cash that he embezzled from our business, and tosses it onto the table with a smirk. But just as he's about to rake in his winnings, the undercover officers spring into action. They surround the table, their badges glinting in the dim light. "Grayson Mitchell, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and illegal gambling," one of the officers says, his voice stern and authoritative. Grayson's face turns pale, his eyes widening in shock. He tries to run, but the officers are too quick. They tackle him to the ground, handcuffing him as he struggles and curses. I step out from behind the camera, my heart pounding in my chest. Grayson looks up at me, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. "You set me up," he snarls, his voice dripping with venom. "You'll pay for this, Amara. I'll make sure of it." I shake my head, my voice calm and steady. "No, Grayson. You're the one who's going to pay. You've hurt too many people, destroyed too many lives. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." As the officers lead Grayson away, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's not over yet, I know. There will be a trial, a long and painful process of unraveling the web of lies and deceit that Grayson has woven. But for now, I can breathe a little easier, knowing that my daughter and I are safe, that our future is no longer in the hands of a man who would stop at nothing to destroy us. Liam puts a hand on my shoulder, his expression one of pride and admiration. "You did it, Amara. You stood up to him. You fought back. I always knew you had that strength inside you." I nod, feeling a lump form in my throat. "I couldn't have done it without you, Liam. You've been there for me every step of the way, even when I didn't deserve it." Liam smiles, his eyes soft and understanding. "That's what friends are for, Amara. That's what family is for. And you and Zoe, you're my family. I'll always be here for you, no matter what." I lean into his embrace, feeling the warmth of his support and love wash over me. And for the first time in months, I allow myself to hope, to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything will be okay. As we leave the police station, I take a deep breath of the cool night air. The road ahead won't be easy, I know. There will be challenges and obstacles, moments of doubt and fear. But I also know that I'm not alone, that I have the strength and the support to face whatever comes my way. And that knowledge gives me the courage to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The morning of Grayson's arraignment, I wake up with a knot in my stomach. I know that today is the first step in a long and painful process, but I'm determined to see it through. I dress carefully, choosing a simple black suit and a white blouse, my armor against the battle ahead. Liam picks me up, his face etched with concern. "Are you sure you want to do this, Amara? You don't have to face him alone." I nod, my jaw set with determination. "I need to do this, Liam. I need to look him in the eye and let him know that he hasn't broken me, that he hasn't won." We arrive at the courthouse, the steps crowded with reporters and curious onlookers. I take a deep breath and push through the throng, my head held high. Inside, the courtroom is packed, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Grayson is led in, his hands and feet shackled. He looks pale and drawn, his once confident demeanor replaced by a sullen defiance. He catches my eye and sneers, his lips curling into a mocking smile. The judge reads out the charges against him, a litany of crimes that makes my stomach churn. Fraud, embezzlement, extortion, illegal gambling, the list goes on and on. Grayson pleads not guilty, his voice dripping with disdain. As the hearing ends, I approach Grayson, my heart pounding in my chest. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" I say, my voice shaking with anger. "You think you can just walk away from all the pain and destruction you've caused?" Grayson laughs, a harsh, grating sound. "You're pathetic, Amara. You think you've won, but you haven't seen anything yet. I'll destroy you, just like I destroyed everything else in your miserable little life." I lean in close, my eyes locked with his. "You're wrong, Grayson. You've already lost. I know about your past, about all the women you've scammed and cheated. I know about the illegal gambling rings you've run, the lives you've ruined, and I'm going to make sure that everyone else knows too." Grayson's face twists with rage, his hands clenching into fists. "You'll regret this, Amara. I'll make sure of it." I shake my head, a small, triumphant smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "No, Grayson. You're the one who's going to regret ever coming back into our lives. I'm going to testify against you, and I'm going to make sure that you pay for every single one of your crimes." As the guards lead Grayson away, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's not over yet, I know, but I've taken the first step. I've faced my demons and come out stronger on the other side. Outside the courthouse, I find Zoe waiting for me, her face streaked with tears. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she sobs, her body shaking with grief and anger. "I can't believe I ever trusted him, that I ever let him into our lives." I pull her into a tight hug, my own tears mingling with hers. "It's not your fault, Zoe. He fooled us all, but we're going to get through this together, I promise." Zoe pulls back, her eyes blazing with determination. "I want to testify against him, Mom. I want to tell the court what he did to me, how he manipulated me and used me." I nod, my heart swelling with pride and love for my brave, resilient daughter. "We'll do it together, Zoe. We'll make sure that he never hurts anyone else again." As we leave the courthouse, hand in hand, I feel a sense of hope and purpose that I haven't felt in years. I know that the road ahead will be long and difficult, that there will be setbacks and challenges along the way. But I also know that I have the strength and the support to face whatever comes my way. And that knowledge gives me the courage to keep moving forward, one day at a time.